Delfina sat before a brazier that was older than most languages, its heart a ball of living embers that breathed in slow, patient gusts. Smoke rose and curled like ink in water. Light stitched the darkness into patterns only she could read. She was blind to the eye, but the fire told her everything. It spoke in heat and shadow, and the crackle of spirits folding into ash. The flame writhed like a living thing, folding inward before blooming open again, and within its trembling heart, a figure appeared. Jaime, riding beneath a ghost forest. He was a silhouette at first, then a face, hair like sun-ruined wheat, eyes like turquoise wells. The image moved with the living cadence of a dream, a mortal, standing at the edge of something vast and terrible, his destiny coiled around him like a serpent made of light and shadow. Delfina's breath caught, her blind eyes widening though they saw nothing in this world. They saw everything in the fire. A child carved from dusk, she whispered, and dawn follows him like a lover. A soft wind sighed across the chamber. You gaze too long. Mercy materialized beside her, her form identical, painfully identical, down to the fall of white hair and the crescent-shaped mark beneath the left eye. Her voice was velvet cut with frost. You cannot harbor desire, Delfina. Not for him. Not for anything. Emotion warps prophecy. And you claim to serve Elyandor. Delfina tilted her chin upward, the flames gilding her cheekbones in molten gold. A mother loves her child, even for her flaws. She loves her more for the parts that break her. Is that weakness, sister? Is love now ceasing to be a virtue? Mercy stiffened. Elyandor is not your mother. She is more mother to me than you are, sister, Delfina snapped. And stop, her voice rose, trembling with fury. Stop wearing my face. Mercy smiled, slow and knowing, and this only deepened the wound. My face is Elyandor's face, the face of her servants, of creation's handmaidens. You are not the only one, shaped in her image. It is the only thing that is mine, Delfina cried, sweeping her arm angrily and sending a bowl of crushed myrrh crashing against the wall. You take my sight, my solitude, my duty. Now you take my form? A guard rushed in, froze, and blinked at the two identical figures. Forgive my confusion. Calasai, he stammered, using the name the Humman folk gave Delfina, meaning daughter of the first light. Which one is the seer? Mercy chuckled. Delfina's lips tightened. Her hand snapped upward. Another object hurled. Before it struck, Mercy dissolved into a swirl of spectral feathers, shrinking, folding, reshaping until a pale bird perched on the broken stone. It fluttered once and vanished out the window. Delfina exhaled sharply, trembling. Footsteps entered behind her. Lady Delfina. Valor Morgorath entered then, broad and enormous as the slow strike of thunder. He was the Mount of Exiles, a warrior whose scars were matte lines on an atlas of battles. His presence cleared a space in the hall that felt sacred and raw. A man with a stone's heart, edged by tenderness. He moved with the care of one who had learned gentleness through loss. He bowed to Delfina with the deference of one who had kept his loyalty through winters. His voice was an old blade, rubbed honest. Lady, he said simply, and she took his offered arm. Blindness left her reliant on the world again. Valor's fingers were a compass. They moved through corridors where light bent to the will of flame seers. The Dark Monk's Citadel, name half whispered in courts of shadow, rose in carved obsidian and weaving vines of living fungus. Green seers prostrated, their palms outstretched like a harvest. They were not purely holy. Corruption marred their flesh with luminous veins, beautiful and terrible as lichens. They leaned forward when she passed, wanting to drink from her sight, as much for cure as for prophecy. Your breathing is uneven, Delfina murmured. You are carrying sorrow again. Valor exhaled, a sound half-cracked, half-contained. Some wounds do not dull with time, my lady. They only learn to speak more quietly. Rahab, Delfina said softly. He halted for the smallest moment. Aye, the word was a fracture. She saved me, Delfina continued, turning her blind gaze toward where she remembered the eastern sun. When the east burned and Mercy commanded her to flee with me, she obeyed. But she carried more than me that night. She carried the last light of her home. Valor swallowed hard. She spoke of you often. Said your presence kept her brave. I wished she would have stayed for herself, not only for duty. You loved her, Delfina said, not as a question. With everything that remained in me after the war, he whispered. For a heartbeat, the corridor held only their footsteps and the distant chanting of monks. Delfina tightened her hold on his arm, a rare gesture of comfort from someone who touched the world through visions, not hands. Valor Morgorath, Elyandor has not abandoned you to despair. Rahab's thread has not ended. I have seen its echo. He turned his head toward her, stunned. My lady, do not give me hope that is cruel. I give you truth, she said. The gods take, but they also return. Your heart will be restored. Not as it was, but as it must be. Valor bowed his head, fighting the tremor in his voice. Then I will trust your sight and walk beside you until that day comes. And I with you, Delfina said gently. Come, they wait for us. Delfina looked into the throng beyond, petitioners, mortals and immortals alike pressing for answers. Mothers with dying infants bowed. Merchants with cracked fortunes asked for counsel. A soldier pressed a small rusted relic into her palm. Faith bleeding into hope. The court was a river of hues and needs, a tableau of all the world's thin knots seeking to be untied by a sovereign who could see what they could not. Her lieutenant, a thin, quick-faced man with ink-dark eyes and a voice like rustling pages, stepped forward urgently. Lady Delfina, a man from the resistance demands audience, he said. Arden Krial rode north to steal the Godkiller. He is in flight. He begs spirit guidance to reach safety. If you answer, he says the blade may yet reach Sophia. Delfina's hand went to her heart like a bell pulled in storm. The court hushed the sound like flint to tinder. She rose, regal and immediate. Guide me to my chamber, she ordered. We fly. Part 2. Sisters in Flight. Delfina's chamber was a hollow of glass and smoke, where small captive birds perched in gilded cages. She crossed to a white bird, its feathers like bone dipped in milk, and breathed to it as if into a child. Mercy returned then, not as bird but as shadowlight, sliding into the doorway with the casual inevitability of tide. Sisters, Delfina called softly, and Mercy answered her as if a bell had been struck in the heart. The two women clasped hands with the ritual familiarity of shared vows. Delfina spoke the words like steel music, sisters in blood, sisters in arms, sisters to serve, sisters forever. Mercy's voice folded into the incantation, old, woven from the spaces where gods meet. The chamber grew thick. Candles drew up like little beacons. Delfina opened the cage. The white bird hopped, light as regret. She closed her eyes, then fell back into the carved chair, as though sleep took her on purpose. Mercy, bright as an unmaking, rose and took flight with the white bird trailing at her shoulder. Delfina's body was both hollow and crowded. She left it to the silence and entered the bird sky. Her spirit was like water poured into sky. She felt the bones of the world and the threads of fate as palpable ropes beneath her palms. They flew. The dark monk's towers became knotted spears in the night as they rose. The forest of souls lay beneath. a breathing thing, its mist writhing like ghosts with memory. The pair split the heavens toward north, where Ilravan roared in its own private hell, a land of fire that swallowed sound. Arden's flight was a line across a map made of pain, horse hooves that slurped ash, 6 frail bodies bound by rope, his face a carved map of one who bargains with doom. Smoke glass spires writhed around him as Verserys' spectral fire swept from flank to flank, each flick a jagged tooth. Men fell, not with the soft hush of mortality, but the violent scream of flame-eating spirit. They dissolved and collapsed into coals. Delfina and Mercy dropped like twin meteors into that battlefield. Where Mercy passed, the spectres recoiled as if seeing their own reflections. Where Delfina landed, a bruised cream from the air, the Cerys' flame paused its dreadful choreography. They took on flesh again mid-flight, contours folding into human bone and cloth. Delfina's robes fluttered with the momentum of wind. Mercy's cloak drank silver light. The flames shrieked to a halt. Verserys' fire shape twisted before them, a towering silhouette of living embers, each movement cracking like bone, heated too quickly. Arden pulled his horse to a near-falling stop. "By the eternal light," he gasped. Who are you?" Mercy stepped forward. "I am the hand of Elyandor." Delfina lifted her chin, flame glinting in her sightless eyes. "And I am the daughter of Elyandor." Arden's mouth trembled open. The first light." "Ride," Delfina commanded, voice echoing with 2 worlds layered atop one another. "We will hold her." Arden fled. Verserys' flame twisted and laughed, a bitter, burning sound. "You will hold me," they answered in unison. "Yes." Verserys surged, heat blistering the ground. Delfina lifted both hands toward the heavens. Clouds roared, ice cracked. Versus barked a cruel laugh. "She will not answer you. The gods do not answer mortals." Mercy's voice slid like a whispering blade. "They never answer me." But Delfina did not stop. Her incantations rose, louder, deeper, shaking the very frost beneath them. Wind howled. She turned to Mercy, her eyes glowing with intent. Her voice rang then, a bell that had been struck till it cracked. A mother always answers her child. The sky split open. A bolt of white gold lightning, thick as a tree trunk, tore from the heavens, screaming like 100 bells unclasping, and speared down Delfina's arm, blasting through her and into Verserys' flameform. The fire goddess screamed, hurled backward across miles of burning terrain, until she slammed into the stone walls of her citadel, breaking them like rotted boom. She lay against her palace's shattered wall, a broken, sharp thing. "You dare!" Then she began to stitch herself, skin mitting with the impatient speed of fire healing its own burn. Cuts and wounds drew back into perfect cruel beauty. Her voice, when it rose, salted the air with fury. "The gods will be punished for this trespass." Back in the south, Delfina's spirit slammed into her body, throwing her from her chair. She woke, breathless, shaking violently. Mercy appeared seconds later, form flickering, unstable. Her voice was soft, broken, prophetic. "We now bear witness," Mercy intoned in that slow weave. "The truce has been broken." Delfina pulled herself upright, the heat of the lightning humming in her veins. Valor watched with something like awe and fear. The dark monks behind them stirred, some with reverence, some with the tremor of the terrified. For a heartbeat, the world balanced on the thin edge between war and mercy. Then Delfina, steadier now than she had any right to be, spoke again, not an incantation so much as a vow. "Sisters in blood, sisters in arms, sisters to serve, sisters forever," Mercy answered, their voices locking together like twin keys that turn a heavy lock. In that sound lay the truth of their bond. Spite and tenderness braided into a weapon that would cut the coming night. And far beyond Ilravon, in the halls of kings who slept unknowing, the wheel trembled. The gods had been struck, and the realm smelled a change. Verserys clawed herself upright, rage a living thing. She made no graceful speech of surrender. Instead, she roared to the skies, a vow that shook the mountains. You have broken the covenant. By blood and sun, you will answer. Delfina steadied, watched the retreating flame form, and felt the echo of the bolt in the marrow. She had reached into the sky and pulled down a storm for a mortal cause. She had called on the mother beneath all mothers. The cost, she knew, would be heavy. Mercy's face had the dust of the stars in it now. Something had cracked behind the calm. Valor took Delfina's hand in both of his. An iron promise. We shall follow, he said simply. His voice was a promise of swords and silence. He had been hollow with grief. Now there was a small, stubborn light in him again. Arden mounted and rode away as the horn of Ilravon sounded. A low, terrible sound that promised vengeance. He did not look back. He could not know all that had transpired. The bolt, the sister chants, the taming of Verserys' fury. All he knew is that had just stolen the god-slaying steel and felt the weight of destiny in his saddle and rode for life. Back at the Citadel, the petitions resumed like a tide forced to break on new stones. Delfina's courts swelled. Mortals and immortals came to see if a goddess had indeed been born naked among them, then clothed in thunder. Valor descended into stories of Rahab, and Delfina fed him a small prophecy. Everything you have lost will be put to work. She left the words like seeds. Mercy, quiet and enormous, folded herself to the brazier's light and turned her gaze outward. She had broken her own rules. She had walked the thinnest line between obedience and love, and come out bled but not broken. She would answer for what she had done, or the gods would. Either way, the truce had been shattered. The war of pantheons, once whispered in prayerful corners, now moved like a hunted beast into sunlight.